did it. Adventure dog is up the river. There are bear tracks everywhere. Big buck tracks coming down. And you want to go check them out, don't you? All right, let's do this. All right, here we are again. Here we are again. That guy that doesn't shut up. The guy that won't go away. Or is it the people that won't go away, right? The people speaking for the people, with the people. As good as it gets. And, of course, Adventure Dog really working on that bone. She's really getting into it. I ran out of elk bones. She ate them all. So I was forced to go buy some of those round leg beef bones. And that might be enough to drive me a little bonkers. Hey, Bubs? All right, so here we go again. I went down. I got to babysit little Chippy for the first hour and a bit in the morning while Sarah goes and does her exercise program in town. And while I was sitting there, I really went for a deep dive, trying to locate emails that I had lost off of my phone, marked as unread in my. All right, so they're marked as read in my inbox. As soon as I grabbed them, put them in a folder, as I explained to everybody before. Previous phone got deleted, gonged, lost them, and now there was at the time 2,500 or so emails in my inbox in the email marked as read, but they weren't read. Just to understand why I keep going back, and it's a little time consuming because I'll start to read and my memory won't recall at all. Save it, get ready to read it. So I really went in there, and I noticed today, diving in there all the way back to the CVID lockdown. Global transfer of wealth time. There was pages of unseen, unread emails and a whole pile of COVID stuff. I mean, hundreds and thousands mixed in there. So anyway, I found a whole bunch, and I'm going to get into them this morning, all right? And what else? I made a quick note. Somebody... Quite often I'll get emails or you get stuff forwarded to each other, and you come across videos of people who have apparently been contacted by these beings. And one thing they all have in common, is they said that they're contacted because they have very important messages for humanity to get out there. Whether they're being contacted from people, from beings from outer space, allegedly, or the forest. But the very dominant common factor, the pattern, is a lot of these people all say they're contacting for a message to humanity. Now, what I have a question about that part is, well, if these beings are that intelligent and they have a big important message for humanity, then why would they not go directly to and contact someone who is involved in mainstream with millions of followers or access to millions of people? It's like a news reporter on a mainstream channel. Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you pick Tom, Dick, or Harry who live in remote Saskatchewan with a population in their town of 343 people, and all of a sudden somebody's contacted there from a being from outer space saying, well, we need to get a message to humanity through you? That part, for me, just doesn't quite make sense. What do you think about that, you guys? You know what I mean? That just doesn't make sense, because so far, out of all the numerous people we've heard who have shared they were contacted and spoken to from these beings or from an entity, and they all said the same thing: we got an important message to humanity, and then they go on to talk about what mankind's doing to the world, and wars and nuclear weapons and pollution, and on and on. But that's a valid question, I think. I'm not challenging the validity of the people who have the messages sent to them. I'm just wondering, okay, what's going on? How come you're not, if you really wanted to get this message across to humanity, you're probably going to go a route where you're going to get it across to humanity in a big way. And you know what I mean? Show up out of nowhere at the halftime show at a football games, on the stage, whatever. You know what I mean? Go when they're doing a political White House report, you know? live in front of the cameras. Talk to the person sharing the report right there on live television. Do whatever. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. I'm babbling. That's a big question I've had every time I hear of somebody who claims to have a message for humanity. Why did the original person, the messenger, pick you? Why? You know what I mean? Like, why? And why not someone who has access to the world's attention? Now, unless they have, and they successfully kept it secret, as usual, right? Meaning the person who's got access to the planet. Now let's get into this. I'm going to try to rattle off. This might even be an email marathon today, maybe. And here we go. Native American man fills in some puzzle pieces. Now, obviously, there's a chance I might have read some of these. We'll see. Who knows if I did? For you to go out of your way and tell me that I already did is probably not going to make much sense. All right, so grin and bear it. Let's go. Good morning, Steve. I'll tell you the truth. It's my grandfather that was born in the late 1800s told. All right. You can call me Hawk. My grandfather was born in Montana, close to the Canadian border, in the late 1800s. His father was Shoshone, and his mother was Flathead, or Salish Kotani, as you probably know it by. His family ended up moving down to the res here in Wyoming. Shortly after this, he and his brothers and sister were taken to the government school. At some point, I'm not sure what age, he ran away from the school and went back up north to Canada and started work as the water boy in a logging crew. He eventually came back to the res here in Wyoming. He spent his life in the mountains, and he had plenty of stories to tell. I heard these stories over and over as a child. Some of the most popular stories people wanted to hear about was about the forest people. I've struggled with whether I should write this to you. My grandfather never gave me permission to retell these stories, but on the other hand, he never told me I couldn't. So I'm old now, and not many summers left for me, so I'll tell you the story as told to me by my grandfather and how he became friends with the forest person. He had seen and was aware that there was hairy people living in the mountains. One day in the late spring, he was making his way on foot down the mountain. To the spot he was working across was very steep. The spot he was working across was very steep, loose shale. He began to hear a ruckus coming from down below him, and roars, and almost yelling. He recognized one of the roars as coming from a bear. He began to quickly move down the shale to see if he could see what it was. The hillside quickly dropped off, so he couldn't see what was below him. And as he got to where it dropped off, he realized he couldn't stop his slide. And he went over the edge like going down a tall, slippery slide on the loose shale. He said it was about 20 feet. Quick slide, and he found himself right by a big sow black bear and a forest person locked up in battle. The bear had the forest person in its teeth by the left arm while pulling backwards and swiping at the forest person with its right paw. The forest person was sidestepping right, trying to avoid the swiping of the right paw and trying to keep from being taken down at the same time. My grandfather stood up, deciding which way to run, when he noticed there was 2 bear cubs. They're in the way of the way he wanted to run. So he kicked at them, and one bit back and started wallowing loudly. The mama bear then let loose of the forest person and came for my grandfather. My grandfather had an old single-shot shotgun with him, a very short rifle. We call it a brush gun. Still have that rifle. It's so crude I don't know if I've ever shot. So the sow turns and charges towards my grandfather. And this is all taking place in about a 20-foot area. I had to go finish her bone in the shop. My grandfather said he fired into the bear's face when it was about 4 feet away. The bear stopped and began to roll around, pawing at his face. The shot had taken both eyes. The forest person ran over and began to beat the bear in the head with a large rock. My grandfather said he held one of the back legs to help keep it down, and then it stopped and was silent except for the cubs which had treed themselves. The forest person had stepped over the big sow's back and held it down with his left hand while beating it with a rock with its right hand over its head. My grandfather was sitting on his butt holding on to a back leg for all he was worth. Now I'm going to say this is just as my grandfather did. My grandfather said, "It was then that I realized I was looking up at the balls in the ass of a forest person. As the forest person was still bent over, choking the last life out of the bear. Then the forest person stood up straight and threw his head back and just stared at the sky. My grandfather didn't move. Then with a blink of an eye, the forest person moved about 10 feet away and stood looking at him. My grandfather was still sitting holding the bear's back leg. Then he says the forest person smiled at him and began to what he thinks was chuckling. So my grandfather smiled and began to laugh too. He said the forest person then crouched down and began to rub dirt into his badly bitten arm and the scratch marks on his left thigh and leg from the bear pawing at him. My grandfather noticed he too was bleeding on his ankle from the cub biting him. So he rolled the sow onto its side and cut some fat out of it and rubbed it on his ankle. Then he walked over to the forest person and showed him to rub some fat on his wounds, which he did, then licked all the bear grease off of his hands. He said they then sat in the shade for a while looking at each other. The forest person went over to the tree where the cubs had climbed up. He said the forest person was up the tree and had the first cub by the back of its neck in a second. He said he grunted at him and dropped the first cub down to him. He said it hit a couple of branches and almost landed on him. My grandfather jumped on it and held it down. The forest person grabbed the second cub by the back of the neck and dispatched it and carried it back down to the ground. He stood looking at my grandfather, still sitting on the cub, so my grandfather took out his knife and dispatched the cub. The forest person then slung the cub he had over his shoulder and grabbed the sow by the leg and walked off into the forest. My grandfather brought the cub home and said it made the best bear grease suave ever. This happened in the early 1920s and was the beginning of a 50-year friendship with the forest person my grandfather called Scar, as he had a scar running down his forehead down to his left cheek. My grandfather was 5'4". He said Scar was about 6 foot tall then and very muscular, and he was a man. His hair was about the same color as a blue heeler, and he was covered by hair, but not very long except on his head and back. Small beard and mustache at this point. He said he could tell Scar was just a young guy like he was. He said if Scar had a blanket wrapped around him, you'd think he was just another person. This happened in the same mountain range that Bobby Short interviewed a native that said he had shot a forest person with his bow, and it was a man. The forest people can talk, and talk he did, and they got a lot to say. As I get time, I'll write more. I don't want any attention from this. There are some around here that would frown on me giving this out. Well, let me look and see if we did get any more emails from this guy. Let me have a look. All right, I just went into 3 of my inboxes and spam folders, and I just copied and pasted his email address in there for the search. Nothing came up. What the hell's up with that? I don't know if it's my stupid Enom email server that sucks butt. A lot. But anyways, I just made a note to email him, so I will email this man right back. All right. Very interesting. At first, when I hear about somebody fighting a black bear, nah. But then again, I can't say that didn't happen for myself. I'm just saying for me, because I have had sow black bears come after me. I haven't had physical contact with one, but I have definitely had a sow black bear come after me. But I've had numerous sow black bears just take off. Like, I don't care about the kids. I'm out of here. I had that other one a couple years ago. I filmed her, and I put those clips on here in the past of those cubs were up the tree, and she just sat at the tree and laid down the log looking at me. That was pretty bold. So, can't say it didn't happen, and that's quite the story to make up, isn't it not? But I would love to hear more. So I made a note to make sure I email this man and see if he did share more or if he would. Interesting, right? Very, very interesting. Said if I had a blanket around him, it would just look like another human. A weak encounter with a dog man is the title of this email. Hi, Steve. I know you don't talk about Dogman, but honestly, you're the only person I feel comfortable sharing this with. This happened when I was a boot in the Marines in 1994. I was fresh out of boot camp and in my MOS school in a small base called Courthouse Bay in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I drew watch duty for 2 days, from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. patrolling a vehicle lot. The lot was fenced in and surrounded by dense woods. In fact, the whole base was surrounded by trees. The first day of watch, I took one of the Hummers for a joyride, and it earned me watch for the whole week from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. It sucked, but I had fun driving around with my buds. The first couple days, I started seeing dark figures moving around in the woods. The woods were a training area with trails and scattered 60 caliber machine gun pits. I assumed they were Marines doing night exercises. Especially when I noticed red glowing lights the size of flashlight lenses. We use red lenses on flashlights for nighttime, so it made sense at the time. Then I began seeing these figures inside the lot. They were fast, moving around and behind vehicles. It was unsettling. And I began posting myself underneath a bright floodlight. These lights were very bright and smack in the middle of the lot. I felt a little safe under the lights with my flashlight, radio, and nightstick. And by the end of the week, I was very tired and barely made it through my shifts. I found an unlocked van that was parked up against the fence. So I jumped in the van, set my alarm for an hour, and crashed hard. I woke up to the crackling sound of the radio, and it was the guard shack talking to another Marine on another post. I remember trying to make sense of the conversation. It was obvious something was wrong, and the Marines sounded very excited over the radio. I laid back down to catch some more sleep when suddenly I felt an intense feeling come over me. I can only describe it as the initial one was before a panic attack. Silence, tunnel vision, and anxiety. I remember not being able to hear anything and having the urgent need to leave the van. And as I opened the rear doors of the van, I saw a group of deer on the other side of the fence. They seemed spooked and kept pushing themselves towards the fence. I thought they were going to break through the fence. The look in their eyes I'll not forget. It reminded me of my first pig kill as a kid. We held a pig down while my grandpa administered the knife. The pig squealed and stared at you with terror in his eyes. I didn't eat pork for a few months after that. Anyways, I was confused about the deer behavior, and as I looked at them, about 150 feet away, I saw dark figures making their way towards us in a zigzag motion. The deer were 3 feet from me on the other side of the fence. The only thing I can think to do was jump back in the van and lock all the doors. Initially, I saw red lights, and they seemed to be 4 or 5 feet off the ground. Then the craziest thing happened. The lights, which I later found out were pairs of eyes, started elevating 20 to 30 feet. By this time, I didn't think they were Marines training. There was something else. Something hunting deer, and now they were 30 feet away and had climbed trees. I was waiting for them to jump down and ambush the deer and me inside the van. I was frozen with fear. I then remembered the van key was in the glove compartment, so I jumped in the driver's seat and cranked the ignition. Only to discover a dead battery. More fear entered my body, and I now heard something giggling. Oh, giggling? I think you meant jiggling. The fence, growling. Something jiggling the fence, growling. And a loud thump like something landing next to the van and bumped into it. I double-checked the door locks and braced myself. And suddenly, bright vehicle lights appeared in the lot. It was the sergeant of the guard who had come. I didn't understand why, since I still had an hour left in my shift, and nevertheless I was happy to see the lights. He called out for me on the radio. As he was making a U-turn underneath the floodlights, I jumped out of the van and made a run for it. I heard a growl and remember not looking back, just running. I made the 50-yard dash in 3 seconds. I jumped in the van and the other 2 Marines on watch were in the van. And nothing was said on the drive back, which was odd. The other 2 Marines were as pale white as me. We arrived at the guard shack, and I was dismissed, and the other 2 were told to stay behind. It was very strange afterwards. Watch duty was canceled the following week, and the base was full of rumors about a wolf monster. The whole time I was waiting for any news or meetings, but nothing happened. I continued with my school until graduation, and I never left the barracks after dark and never saw those 2 other Marines. I went on to serve for 4 years, never looked back. It wasn't until recently when I started watching your YouTube videos of people sharing encounters of dogman did I revisit this experience in my mind. There were 2 dogman encounters reported near Croatan Game Land, which is not far from Courthouse Bay. So, even though I never physically saw a dogman, I'm 100% convinced I encountered them that week of watch duty. Sorry for the long email, but I'll tell you it felt good writing it. I appreciate what you do and love your no-nonsense attitude. I'm one of your subscribers and look forward to your next video. Cheers. Did you say to use your name? All right. Jorge Cordova or George Cordova. One or the other. Appreciate you, man. Sorry it might have taken a while to get your email, but it happens a lot. But I eventually get them, right? I eventually get them. We haven't heard that one before. And there sure is a lot of Marines, a lot of people on forces bases around the world who witness shit, right? And they're told, don't say shit, or they're told, don't say shit. Surprised they left you alone. Maybe they knew that you, well, who knows? That's just, I don't know, having a clue why your superiors left you alone. And I wonder if the other 2 guys are watching the channel too. Or maybe they've even emailed in. Next. Thank you for the outlet to title this email. Steve, first want to thank you for giving folks an outlet to tell their stories. I find them fascinating and insightful. You're very welcome. I spent a lot of time in the woods hunting deer and elk, turkey, coyotes in Washington and Oregon, and I'm very familiar with these animals and the sounds they make. With that being said, I never have had a face-to-face encounter with one of these beings, but I've had some interesting experiences. I've heard rock knocking in areas where no human would go because of the terrain. I've been between 2 groups of, well, I don't know what, and had the strangest howls, almost canine-like, but were not canine, very deep tones. The first group started in above me about 100 yards out. Then a few seconds later below me, I'm guessing 300 plus yards, came the same strange howl in response from another group. Then a few days later, while archery elk hunting, I was on my way back to camp after my morning hunt when I had the strangest incident. I was walking down a logging road back to camp with thick timber above me and below me. It was raining and I was not really hunting at this point, just booking it to camp. And I had the hood of my hunting coat up, which kept me from seeing too well with my peripheral vision. I never do that. It doesn't matter the weather. I never do that. Except when I'm on a horse, I'll do it. I just can't do it. I can't cover up my ears and my vision. There's some new fir tree growth along the cut, on the hill, up on the hillside of me. On the uphill side of me. These trees were 18 and 20 feet tall and very thick. I heard a loud crash from behind me and to the right. Even with the hood up, it was startling. And as I turned, one fir tree was violently shaking. Then it abruptly stopped. I stood there for a few minutes just watching. No movement, no sound, no wind, no nothing. And all 3 of these incidents took place within about 5 miles from each other, south of Mount St. Helens, Washington. My last bit of evidence was 2 years ago while rifle elk hunting near Mount Adam, also in Washington. And up until this point, I had only strange incidents, but then I came across a fresh set of barefoot tracks. They were very crisp, as you could make out 5 toes, wide heel, the complete foot, and impressed into the hard earth about 5/8 of an inch. The small plants were crushed flat. I could not make an impression like that. I could clearly make out a left and a right foot, with about a 4-foot stride. I didn't have my phone with me at the time, so no pictures, but I took a couple of sticks to measure the prints, which measured 15 1/4 by 7 1/2. I know these stories aren't as interesting as a lot of the stories other people have shared with you, but my reason for telling you those encounters are I know I won't be ridiculed or not taken seriously. I've told very few people about the tree shaking incident and the tracks I found. Each time I was laughed at by friends. I find it frustrating not to be able to share a discovery you made. only to be branded a nut. I also feel very fortunate to have witnessed what I have. I know this will sound strange, but I almost feel as if these beings are preparing me to reveal themselves to me, and I don't know if I want that to happen. Anyway, thank you for letting people tell their stories in a place that doesn't exploit or ridicule. It is helpful and encouraging. And the name. Did you say not your name? No. All right, Kevin. Kevin Wentz, appreciate you, man. You're a kind, brave, honest person. Welcome to the club. Yeah, I don't know why they only. I've expressed my thoughts on that. The only reason people laugh is because it scares the shit out of them, and they don't want it to be real, and they don't want to talk about it. That's the only reason. So I felt bad for some of my friends in the past once I showed them the video, and then they, like I said before, one of my better friends said, oh, "I wish I didn't see that," and he was one who used to laugh when I bring it up, and then that's when I realized, oh. It scares the shit out of him. And he doesn't want to know or acknowledge it. He just doesn't. And that must be the majority of the people out there, right? Next, my story. Dan, Pennsylvania. Good day, Mr. Steve. My name is Dan. I'm writing to you today because, honestly, you feel like a safe place where I can rip through the crazy-ass situations I've had in the woods of Pennsylvania. I currently live in North Carolina. I'm a former United States Marine, and I currently work for the Department of Defense. That's why I'm only using my first name. I want to maintain my security clearance, and they frown on behavior such as participating in this subject which they consider nonsense. They are either so ruthless when attacking someone who's obviously having a hard time with the situation they experienced. While I was in the Marine Corps, I've seen some of the most horrific things that humans are capable of. I also saw some of the horrific things I am capable of. Steve, I've seen monsters, pure evil, wearing a human body. These people have absolutely no respect or feelings when it comes to hurting, or worse, the people who don't agree with them. I did some terrible things to the monsters that just wanted nothing more than to hurt people. I still wrestle with the horrible things I did to fight terrorism. I still, to this day, 17 years later, have nightmares of those I hurt or dispatched to the next level of their belief. Anyway, the first time I had an experience was when I was 15 years old. I used to ride dirt bikes and four-wheelers every minute I could when I wasn't working or in high school. I love riding. I loved being in the woods. In 1995, it was in December, I was on my way home from riding with the fellas and ladies. My buddy Sean, his girlfriend, Steve and his girlfriend, and myself and my girlfriend were all riding through the woods hauling ass home. Where I'm from in Pennsylvania, there are very high hills in Allegheny National Forest. Most people who are not from there refer to the hills as mountains, but we always call them hills. I've read this before, but it was a long time ago, and I'm not going to stop. This man deserves all the respect, and maybe even twice as much, so here we go. We get to read it again. We were at the top of a hill, which heading down one hillside, you would end up in the state park, and the other hillside led us home to Bradford, PA. The town, not the county. City of Bradford's located in McKean County. We were sailing down the hill to get home, and about 2 miles before we would separate to get to our homes, we were moving through an area really thick with hemlocks. I was probably doing maybe 5 to 6 miles per hour because the view was so pristine and beautiful, bottom line. No other way to put it. It was absolutely beautiful. With all the snow pressing down on the branches of the hemlocks, it looked like a postcard from Hallmark with a little of Christmas morning. It was breathtaking. I had to stop and take it in. We didn't have phones and cameras, etc. We took mental photos, so I stopped to get a good look and take it in. And Steve, I swear to you, the next part was something out of the Twilight Zone. I was sitting on my four-wheeler, putting my hands near the motor to warm them up. I was scanning back and forth as you do, keeping a constant eye on your surroundings. I couldn't hear anything. It was eerily quiet because of the snow, putting a soundproof-like blanket over everything. When I noticed a little bit of movement behind a hemlock about 30 feet to my right. I put my hand up to stop my friends from talking and pointed towards where I saw the movement and said, "I think someone's walking out here." I assumed it was a man or a woman or both. We always seen people out walking or riding while we were out riding, so I put my hand back up and said, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" Just trying to be friendly and let them know that we were there. When, just as if it was no big deal, this creature took a step out from behind the branch. He was so tall. Oh my God. At this point, I'm still assuming it's a man. Now, of course, I'm 30 feet away, and I just couldn't believe how tall this dude was. I thought he was in a gray, full-body Carhartt suit. I yelled to him, "Hey, bud, you okay?" Because this area was a four-wheeler trail, barely. It was a really narrow area. I didn't see any tracks in the trail, not walking or any wheelers. And he didn't acknowledge us. I think because the wind was blowing at us, so it swallowed my voice. So I yelled again, a lot louder this time, and I got a response that made me almost piss myself. This creature turned his head and looked at me, and I couldn't move. I was thinking in my mind, what the F am I looking at? I looked at my buddies, and they had the same reaction. My girlfriend had gotten off the four-wheeler to tighten her boots, and she wasn't watching us, more concerned with her boots, until she looked at me and then at the creature. And she started screaming. It ripped through that snow insulation, and I swear it would have... Sorry. She started screaming, and it ripped through that snow insulation, and I swear it would have broken a window. It finally snapped me out of my stupor, and I started the four-wheeler. She went from like 10 feet away to behind me sitting on the seat in less than 3 seconds. It felt like I stared at this creature for hours, and the whole ordeal was less than 1 to 2 minutes, and it was absolutely terrifying. I was so astounded with how big it was. Not just tall, but shoulder width, bust size, the length of its arms. Longer than ours, and the muscle mass of this thing was incredible. You could see the arms were so defined, even with it covered in hair, not fur. His thighs were massive, and you could see the definition of his thighs. He was all muscle. I couldn't really see the hands, but it did have that pronounced head at the top, that dome-shaped cranium. Not super pronounced, but it was there. When it looked at me, in the few seconds I locked eyes with it, I felt like I was looking at a human. One more time, I felt like I was looking at a human. Its eyes were like ours. The brow and forehead, etc., was more exaggerated than ours, but it was not monkey or an ape. This creature was alert and aware. Although it scared the absolute shit out of me because I was not at all expecting that, I have to say I felt no threatening feelings. I was intimidated, of course, but this was the biggest creature I'd ever seen. And he looked like a human. But at no time did I feel scared for my life. I'm starting to tear up just thinking about this. I didn't get any feelings of harm. However, when my girlfriend started screaming, all hell broke loose. Excuse me. That's when everyone lost their minds. I have mentioned a few times when I thought I was in good company and I promptly was ridiculed and told I was drunk or high, etc. It's like you said, no weed or drink is going to make me see something like that. More than anything, I could not believe, first, the size of this thing, and second, how much he looked like a man. His face was so much like ours are. It was a lot like the drawing you showed. It was an absolutely beautiful specimen. This is the third time I've told this story, and I'm only telling it because of your character, and I see that you're much more evolved than most. And there is no judgment and sarcasm, just understanding and knowing that you're not alone. You've given us understanding, peace of mind, and a safe place to vent. Thank you so much for listening, and I will email you again with the other story, which happened 4 years later. It's almost like when you have had an experience with these creatures, it's more likely to happen again. Truth is stranger than fiction. Thanks again, brother, and please keep this going. You have no idea how much I appreciate your sentiment and kindness without the judgment and sarcasm. There you go. And you're welcome again and again and again, man. And absolutely appreciate this man from sending in this absolutely true experience. If your gut's screaming what mine's screaming, absolutely valid without a doubt. Now, I am curious if he emailed us again, so I'm going to pause and crack open my email. And I'm going to search his name and see if he shared his other account, all right? Okay, I did a thorough search, and I came up with one more email from Dan. And he was just emailing me to express his frustration and concern about somebody who emailed me and threatened me back in the day, and you wanted to go kick his ass. And I appreciate that backup, man, big time. But you didn't email us your other experience. If you're still here, throw it down, brother. Or not. And I'll see you about, I'll email you back here. Hold on a second. I'll try to email you back here when I get a minute. I'll copy this email again. Here we go. Mark this next one as read. California, Sierra Nevada's encounter. How many times have we heard of that zone? Hey there, Steve. First off, I want to say thank you for doing all you're doing on this topic. It's nice to have such a credible professional person finally publicly speak truths on this topic. Okay, my name is... All right, I'm going to read it. Okay, my name is Jade Bull. And I was born and raised in the Sierra Nevadas in a place called Shaver Lake, California at about 6,000 feet elevation, just south of Yosemite. Living in high elevation mountains, it's a lifelong necessity to cut firewood to survive. In my mountain range, we have a prized pine wood that only grows above 8,000 feet called tamarack. Very familiar with tamarack. Looks pretty cool in the fall, doesn't it? So during the summer, a buddy and I would make our trips up the mountain to collect our firewood for the coming winter. And usually we would go to a remote area called Sample Meadow. When we were finished for the day, we would grab a couple of beers and hike to a close-by creek to cool off and explore around before heading home. This afternoon in 2004, we walked to the other side of this ridge and found a small creek. Sat down, leaning on a couple trees, and drank a couple beers while cooling off. We heard what sounded like a person walking close by. We both looked at each other, then looked towards the sound. About 50 yards away was a Sasquatch, about 6 feet tall, walking toward us like it hadn't noticed we were there. Right alongside a creek, again, right? I instantly was scared, but I didn't feel threatened at that point. We both were just frozen looking at this thing. It's about 35 yards away. At about 35 yards away, it finally noticed us, and it looked right at us, but didn't seem surprised or startled at all. For some reason, my buddy and I both sat down, not taking our eyes off this thing. We then heard a whistle up above us, and the creature looked up the hill, then back at us. Then a whistle from below us that sounded pretty close. It looked up the hill, though again, and back at us. We were both just sitting there, frozen pretty much, in awe and what's happening. The one we're looking at made a clicking sound with its mouth and showed us its teeth, but it seemed in a playful, not threatening way, like a kid. But what's crazy is, it looked downhill and took a few steps downhill as we heard footsteps start to approach from uphill, which was behind us. Like it was taking our attention off their movements on purpose. About 20 yards to our right, a huge 8.5 to 9 foot tall monster was walking straight downhill, right across the front of us towards the smaller one. And as it walked by, it looked down at us and made a deep, gruntled sound that, like saying, "Don't effing move." It met up with the small one. The big boy whistled again. The one below whistled back, and they both headed downhill towards that one. And right as they walked away, the big boy looked back at us one more time and shook his head like what's up, as to saying, "You guys are good to go now." Let me read that again smoother. Right as they walked away, the big boy looked back at us one more time and shook his head like, "What's up?" as to saying, "You guys are good to go now." It was the most amazing experience I've ever had, but terrifying. Over the years in this area, I always felt like we were being watched, but never seen anything until this day. My buddy and I finally stood up and promptly started back to the truck. All we were saying was, "Oh my God, what the F, let's go, oh my God." On the ride home, we talked about the whole experience. And I was saying how it was the one time I didn't have a gun with me when going on that walk in that area. Maybe that's a good thing. It might have been a whole different experience if I had. My buddy didn't want to tell anyone, so I respected his request. Until now, writing you. I told my father, but no one else. That's why I won't mention his name, but you can mention mine. Appreciate you and what you're doing. Thanks. Jade Bull. This encounter was in the Sample Meadow area above Huntington Lake, California. There you go. Read it before, I'm pretty sure, but that's a long time ago. That was in 2020. It's been read. I wonder if your friends come to terms with it better, and I wonder what your father said to you. What did your father say to that? All right, here's another one. I know I didn't read this one because I don't remember these pictures. This is titled BC Footprint Photos. Stein Valley, Squamish, Harrison is the title of this email. All my popular stomping grounds. And this is sent in 2021. Congrats on the move. I hope everything goes smooth for you and hope the horses are doing great. I'm a young British Columbian man who's spent lots of time exploring the waterways and mountains of the Fraser Valley, the Stein, Squamish, and interior of the province. I'm not unfamiliar with the backcountry, and I'm an avid hunter and fisherman, and I've had multiple experiences with these beings in all the places I've mentioned above. Where to start? When I was around 15 years old, my friend and his dad and I left the Fraser Valley to go up to his remote property a few hours down a dirt road. A few hours down a dirt round few clicks south of Columbia. All right, couple typos. A few hours down a dirt road, a few clicks south of Williams Lake. It was the middle of February when we decided to make this trip. The purpose was to go stake out a gold claim in the valley below the property. We geared up and took our equipment and hiked down the old logging road, which is just wide enough for an ATV. When hiking down, I started to notice a feeling of slight discomfort. Brushing it off as just hiking into an unfamiliar area, we made it down to the gold claim and started digging. About an hour goes by, and rocks started trickling down into the ravine from the ridge above, which was quite strange due to the lack of wind and it being colder than minus 25. We didn't think much of it and continued on with our activities. When we finally decided to take the hike out, I noticed when we got up to the logging road behind the cabins, there was a singular massive footprint embedded in the snow. I wish I had the chance to take a photo. I mentioned it to my friend and his dad, and they brushed it off as snow falling off a tree, and I called BS. We dropped our packs off and went into the cabin to make some dinner. And while the boys were in the cabin, I went outside to take a leak. Outside in minus 25 in just my underwear and boots. I walked 20 feet away from the cabin and started to take a piss. When from about 100 feet off in the bush near where the old logging road is, I heard a loud snap, followed by an extremely loud, indescribable, 3-pitch/tone scream. It made the little heat from my body instantly evaporate, and my skin crawled. I ran inside and didn't say one word. I knew they wouldn't believe me. At the same location, I've also been grunted at when no animal was visible, and heard insanely heavy breathing and felt incredible fear and dread. Also, I've had the side of the guest cabin literally slapped in the middle of the night. The following night, pine cones and full-size sticks were tossed at our tin roof. Talk about a rough sleep. I also have had other experiences in many other places in BC. I've heard them at Hatzick, Suicide Creek. I had powerful visions inside of the Stein Valley when hiking through there, and I've heard rocks being through into canyons. A few typos. Should have been thrown into canyon pools, and heard voices and screams at a local tributary when steelhead fishing. Located in blank river. Please don't mention the name due to fear of people trying to explore that rugged area and protection of native land. Thank you, Steve, for everything that you do. Give the folks a platform to be heard. Giving the folks a platform to be heard is what we need during these crazy times. Keep info hidden, but you can show the photo if you wish. If you wish to hear my other stories, you can contact me. Photos are taken at the mouth of Suicide Creek after the Fraser pulled the tide out that morning. Had a very strange and strong energy surrounding that area. My buddy's size 11 fishing boot. P.S. If you ever are looking to hire a farmhand or even guide and camp cook or person, I'm currently living in Cranbrook. Grew up in the Fraser Valley for 20 years and have tons of dairy farming experience working with horses, cattle, dogs, and goats. I'm very well versed in that work field. Have lots of hunting, hiking, and a bit of trapping experience as well. I'm willing to relocate too. I have my own reliable 4x4. Okay, man. I'm not hiring anybody right now, but I appreciate that. And note taken. I will get a hold of you. And these photos are awesome. Obviously seen while fishing. Got the waders and wader boots on. Wow. I'd imagine there's more photos, but what more do you need, right? more prints, I mean. There you go, you guys. Another one. Appreciate that. I'll email you again. We'll see if maybe you want to come on here and talk about things, possibly. All right, here we go. Here is another one. Northwest Georgia, U.S. Old Bigfoot Story is the title of this email. I don't know if this story would be worthy of adding to a video, but I found it unique. I thought you might enjoy it. I pulled this from Facebook and posted it below. Pasted it. This is a few years old, and this gentleman is now deceased. All right. Mr. Brown lives in Somerville, Georgia. He's 77 years old now and doesn't get into the woods like he used to, but in August of '86, he was in Jenkins Gap, Somerville, Georgia, looking for ginseng. He hunted and sold it for extra money for his family, though he was a carpenter by trade. This day was a little different from the start. He usually has a friend with him, but his partner could not come this trip. He said when he exited his truck near the fire tower, he already had a feeling he was being watched. He said he thought it might be a game warden looking for poachers. He entered the forest and started a search, dropped down a small hill and found a flat area where he spotted lots of ginseng. He was busy digging up the roots when he got the overwhelming feeling again of being watched. He looked behind him expecting to see his hunting friend, but there stood the strangest creature he's ever seen. There stood a giant, hairy, man-like thing half covered in dried, caked mud. The mud was mainly on its lower half and hung in small clumps, like it was wallowing or crawling through it. It was approximately 8 feet tall with 4 to 6 inch brown, black hair all over. At only 18 to 20 feet away, he got a very good look at it. He said it had a big head that looked set on strong shoulders with no neck. He described it as medium build, long arms that hung to its knees, and a powerful stench that smelled like a dead animal. As he looked it over while frozen to the ground where he was digging, he noticed his left arm seemed lifeless, and the fingernails on that hand had grown so long they tangled into a knot, curling the hand. That sounds really odd. This stood there for what seemed like 20 minutes, but in reality it was probably 22 minutes. Then it slowly did a half turn to his left and did a low grunt twice. It then turned its upper half to see if it was still there. Again it looked away and grunted a second time, then swung its upper half to see if he was still there. It then took a couple steps away from him, and he noticed that it had a bad leg too. It said it almost stumbled like an old drunk man. Behind Mr. Brown was a steep hill, and he figured if there was a way to get out of this place, it was straight up that hill, as that animal looked like it had seen better days. As soon as the creature took a couple steps, Mr. Brown tore up that hill faster than he's ever moved, through loose leaves, roots, and rocks. When he reached the top, he vomited repeatedly, not from the stench, but from the pure fear. On his way home, he stopped by the sheriff's office because he said he was afraid of what could happen if that creature ever came upon a child in the forest. Good for him. He told the newspaper and the TV folks from Atlanta as well. He said he was brought up to never tell a story, and it was his responsibility to warn others. No one in Somerville has ever told him to his face they thought he was lying, but he knows some think he was, and that has damaged him a bit. Hope you enjoy. John Roach. There you go. The fingernail mentioned, I wonder if possibly that was a handful of roots or something that he was digging for too, maybe. Because I don't think it's even possible for one of these people to have long fingernails with what they do normally. I'm guessing, but who knows? You never know, right? Wasn't there. Thanks for that share, man. Thanks for the share. Okay, what do we got here? This next one is titled, that thing recording? Yep. My Bigfoot Encounter. Hello, Steve. Chris here from Oregon. Thanks for what you're doing here. So back about 15 years ago, I had my encounter with this thing. I was up four-wheeling in my Toyota by myself, which I never do due to the fact of something going wrong. But this night I went solo. I was on a Wildcat mountain driving a trail that went... I was on a Wildcat mountain driving a trail that went up from what we call West Wildcat to East Wildcat, which I had been on a shitload of times. The trail was a mix of old logging roads and old Forest Service roads, and it wasn't that difficult of a trail with 42-inch tires on top on my Toyota. Well, on this trail there was an old timber bridge that was taken out, so I had to drop down it and come back up the other side. But that's when I got stuck due to the snow-covered rocks. So I shut my truck off, got out, put my winch in neutral, and pulled the cable up to a tree. It was snowing out and the wind was blowing out of the west, and that's when a rock the size of a football or a little bigger went flying over my truck from the passenger side to the driver's side. I thought, what the hell was that? Was someone messing with me up here? So I got back down to my truck, put the winch back in gear, and that's when another rock goes flying over. It was getting dark and even darker in the trees, so I could see who or what was doing it. At this point, I'm kind of freaked out. So I got in my truck and started it back up and pulled myself up the steep embankment. I got out, unhooked the cable, and that's when this big-ass tree branch gets thrown like a javelin right at my truck from the east against the wind, just missing my truck. I got back in my truck and got the hell out of there. I think this thing was trying to scare me out of its territory, and it sure worked. I never drove that trail again. I never told anybody. I never told none of my buddies about, due to the fact they would think I'm crazy. I wasn't going to stop. I was going to stop by this Bigfoot museum / roadside tourist trap, but was put in down the road from my house, but found out it's run by one of the freaks from finding Bigfoot, so I didn't want to waste my time. Well, thanks again for what you're doing. Getting the word out, Chris. Chris, thanks for your time, man. Thanks for that honest experience. Appreciate it. You know you're not alone. You know you're not alone. I don't have too many friends that laugh at me anymore. Not too many people at all laugh at me anymore, actually. Actually, I can't think of anybody who's laughed at me for quite some time, but I think in the past, the few that I have, I just give them that look, right? Just look them square in the eyes and go, what, you think I woke up this morning and needed some attention, especially from you? You think I made that up just for the benefit of getting you to laugh at me or something? Is that what you're really thinking right now? Right? And that look and tone seems to work. But I'm dead serious. You think I woke up this morning and I needed attention from you. So I thought, what should I make up this morning that'll make you laugh at me? It's pretty funny, right? Because it's really funny to say you've seen something like this. Brings down the house every time. Said no one. Said no one. All right, here we go. One more. Thank you for your platform and your attitude for looking for answers to difficult questions. Questions that shouldn't be so difficult to ask or be validated. I don't expect you to have to read my stories because they aren't dramatic in any way. I do want to share them as I believe you are correct in that this is a way to validate and unload all at one time. I'm a 73-year-old practicing RN and Army veteran. I've done a lot of camping, very little hunting. And my first unexplained experience is when I was in my early 20s. I enjoyed camping and took some alone time in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California. I hiked up to a spot we call Skunk Cabbage Meadows. It's on the back trail to the peak of San Gorgonia. Gorgonia? Is there Gorgonia? Gorgonia? Or Gorgonia? It's not far out from Angel's Camp. Anyway, I didn't take a tent. Just a sleeping bag and a bit of food, and my 50 cal ammo can, waterproof. I was fast asleep the first night when I was awakened by something messing up my hair. Kind of like the way you mess up your son's hair in a playful way. I was instantly wide awake and looked around, but I didn't see anything or hear anything. I was a bit startled, but I never felt the dread that so many other folks have described, yet it took me a while to go back to sleep. I still have no idea what could have done that. I thought maybe a deer, even a bear, tried licking my head, but that didn't make sense. Maybe an owl? I don't think that fits either. My second odd experience was up in the Redwoods in Kings Canyon National Park. My wife and I were taking a few days up in the area and rented a tent cabin. It was in early spring. Late one night around midnight, I wasn't falling asleep very well, so I decided to get a little exercise. What? Excuse me. I went for a jog down the highway. It was a bright moonlit night, so I didn't need a flashlight. I was enjoying my jog and had gone for about a mile when I had the unmistakable feeling I was being followed and stalked. I thought that I was being a bit of a ninny. Tried to keep going, but the feeling didn't go away. It was getting worse as I kept going on. My thoughts at the time were maybe a cougar was following me, but there's nothing behind me on the road, and the feeling seemed to be coming from the embankment on my left. Finally, I made a turn and began jogging back, trying not to show fear or panic, but I sure kept an eye out to my right as I returned to the tent cabin. I don't remember saying anything to my wife about my experience, and I don't remember hearing anything unusual. No tree knocking, no growls or screams, yet the feeling of danger and being stalked was unmistakable. Thanks again for exposing that there are things that go bump in the night out in the woods. Carrying a weapon might make you feel better, but unless you've got a rapid-fire cannon. Anyway, one of these things could probably put a bowling ball-sized rock upside of your head without warning, so I doubt a weapon would really do any good. These things seem to have much better woodcraft than we will ever have. By the way, based on your hunting experience, I think I can guarantee you the Lord has some task for you. Ask him to show you before it's too late. He'll reveal your calling if you sincerely ask. As many times he's saved your bacon, maybe you owe it to him to ask. Just saying. David Tyndall. David, appreciate that, man. Appreciate the email. People need to know. I don't know too many people that leave their wife in the tent and go for a jog at night, but whatever. I wouldn't. Not me. I think I know what my purpose in life is. It's getting fairly more clear to me as the days go by. Okay, one more. My Bad Sasquatch Encounter is the title of this email. Steve, my encounter happened about 2 months ago, and I'm still having night terrors about it. So, me and my brother and his girlfriend all went on a hiking trip up in northern Saskatchewan near La Range. La Range? That's a no, La Range. We were on day 2 of a 4-day trip, and we're having a hell of a time, and then all of a sudden everything went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but creepy quiet. We started hearing tree knocks and whistles. Then rocks were being thrown. I've been a subscriber to your channel since you're at 12,000 subs, so I knew what was about to happen, and I was not ready for it because this is one thing that I did not want to encounter. Then it stopped for about a minute, and then I swear, on my life, a rock about the size of a grapefruit was thrown and hit my brother on the lower right side of his body. He went down. At this point, I was shitting my pants. I went to help him up, and my brother's girlfriend screamed in terror. Me and my brother looked at what was making her scream, and my body froze. My blood went ice cold. There, about 30 yards ahead of us, was a dark brown, kind of like a dark chocolate color, being. He was just staring at us in an angry-looking way, like we just trespassed on his land. He had to be about 8 or 9 feet tall. But the one thing that I still see in my nightmares are his eyes. His eyes were human. These beings are not a type of an ape. They're like a different species of human. Human. Human, human, human. He stared at us for about 30 or more seconds. And then out of nowhere, he made this blood-curdling scream and he ran back into the bush. And after this, we turned around and made our way back to the truck with no hesitation. It was about an hour and a half walk back to the truck. And the entire time, we felt like we were being watched. And when we finally got back to the truck, we all had a sigh of relief. When we got back on the highway, my brother's girlfriend broke down into tears. When we got back, we went to the doctor and found out that my brother ended up with 4 broken ribs and a bruised lung. You're the first I've told my story to, and probably the last. It has ruined the outdoors for me, and I just wish these beings didn't exist. Thank you for listening. P.S. Response would be nice because you're honestly a role model to me and was hoping you could give me some pointers on how to cope with this because it still bothers me to this day. I love what you're doing and all the best to you. And if you put this in a video, I'd like to keep my name private. All right, I'll go back to the beginning. Did I say your name? I didn't. Okay, man. Sorry it took a while to get you your email. I apologize for that, but it's out of my control, right? It just is what it is. There's literally thousands of people who haven't been heard yet. But they'll be heard. Man, what do I say at this stage of the game? I mean, I'm definitely not the Ann Landers of the outdoors, but I guess maybe I'm close. I don't know. You power through it. You know what I mean? You power through it. And you don't let anybody take anything from you. You just got to be strong and power through it. You know what I mean? They only ruin it for you if you let them ruin it for you. You know? You go out there, you state your plans for the day, let them know what you're really out to do, and just leave your ass alone. Just leave me alone. I've said that I don't know how many times on here, right? I'm going hunting today. I know you're here. This is what I say. Word for word. I know you're here. I know you know I'm here. Just frickin' leave me alone. Now, I usually throw in a lot of curse words because that's just what I do. I have a dirty mouth on me sometimes. But yeah, you just let them know. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. I don't need a picture of you. I don't need to prove to anyone that you're here. I know you're here. I'm just going hunting, and I'm going to leave. And it's working for me for the most part. I mean, I still have weird things happen to me each year. It's just the way it is. But nothing bad, I don't think. Nothing really bad. Nothing bad has happened to me. I mean, I've been nervous. I've left a few places. Been freaked out a little bit. 2 years ago, I left my camp only because it sounded like a frickin' tank was coming through the forest or something. And I'm like, I'm not down with this. I'm not down with this. And I felt terror. I don't know why. First time ever. And I was panting like a frickin' dog. Like that on the phone. When I got into service, phoned Sarah, told her what I was doing. That was a weird experience. I don't experience terror. I normally don't experience terror. And I never lose my shit. Like, I don't lose my shit. ABCs is my best friend. Always become. But anyway, hope you're still here following the channel, man, because you can learn a lot, right? And especially learn that there is literally tens of thousands of human beings in the same position you are, and they know, right? They know. So that's comforting, too, right? This kind of sucks. It actually pelted your buddy with that boulder. That's some dirty pool. You know what I mean? I mean, let's face it. I mean, I don't have any plans at all, any urge at all to harm one of these people with anything, meaning start a fight. Not into it. I'm not starting a fight with them. No interest. But if I had my Magnum in my hands, which I normally do, and somebody hit me with a rock that big, and it broke my bones and injured my internal organ, it's a game on. You're getting one back at you. 110%, no matter what you are, you're getting one back at you. Because if you can break my ribs with a rock, you're probably going to try to crush my skull with the next one. No matter what you are. Right? Anyway. There you go. Enough babbling for today. That was a good little volley of getting emails heard from from the inbox that are possibly lost. Maybe one in there, maybe two repeated. No big deal. If it upsets you, you can always get a refund at the door for your ticket here, right? I'll gladly refund your ticket here on this channel if you've been absolutely angry in any way. Just give me your address and I'll get that refund right to you. But anyway, there you go. Done reading for the morning. Sarah's gonna go pick up another child. Emma. Now there's gonna be two of them. But she's taking Chippy with her, so I'm gonna go, I gotta do the brakes, my back brakes, my truck. I gotta finish fixing the fence and the chicken coop. The horses tore down. What else? Something else I was gonna do. I gotta fix her, her laundry line. And on and on and on. Then what? I'm gonna get all my gear ready to get my gear together, because I think that maybe I might go to my favorite steelhead fishing river tomorrow morning. Hopefully that goes smooth and I just have to concentrate on fishing and that's it. And then carry on from there. All right. I'll be back later. And what else, Sarah? I don't know what she has left of these. I haven't a clue, or the new house, but she did tell me that the people that she gets to create them, they're going on holidays for like 3 weeks or something. So, if you missed out, it won't be restocked for a little bit, sadly. But it will be restocked, but I'm just letting you know. I don't know what, I haven't a clue what's in there. It's her deal. But whatever's in there, it's not getting restocked for 3 weeks. So there. What else? The new trail camera, I already showed you that. And it's 100%, finally, it's a camera, trail camera that I don't need anything more than what it does for me, and that is the honest to God truth. And that link's down below with a discount code if you want to get some of those. And that's about all she wrote. Oh, you know what I'm going to do as well, because that footprint picture, that's such a awesome frickin' photo of that footprint filled with water right beside the guy's waiter boot, and it's British Columbia, and it's steelhead season right now. And I already shared with all you that I don't promote this topic on my social media. I just don't. You can go check it out. I don't do it. But I'm just for today, because I don't know why I'm getting knee-jerked. I'm going to post the photo of that guy's waiter, fishing boot and waiter, and the footprint. I'm going to post it on my Instagram right now. And I'm just going to say, because I know there's a lot of fishermen on there and hunters from BC on my channel. Here you go. So let's just say you're fishing on a tributary on the Fraser River and you see this footprint. Then what are you going to do? I'm going to put that right now. It'll be interesting to see what the comments are, right? How many people are going to be comedians? Try to make fun of it. Or ad. You never know. I'll be back tomorrow. Share my story at howtohunt.com. That's where you get your truth shared word for word. All right? And throw it all in there. Okay? You don't have to make it short. Well, kind of to the point, but you know what I mean. I'll be back later.